My name is Linnea Hartwell, and 24 hours before my husband's surprise vacation, my 82-year-old grandmother looked me in the eyes and said, "Don't get on that plane. He doesn't plan to bring you home." I almost laughed. Then I opened my husband's laptop and found a mountain resort booked for 3 adults, thousands of dollars missing from our joint account, and a message that ended with the words, "Long enough for us to be somewhere else when they start searching." In that moment, I realized my marriage wasn't falling apart. I was reading the first page of a plan I was never supposed to survive. Chapter 1. The Trip He Wouldn't Let Me See. On Sunday night, March 16th, 2025, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched my husband pack a charcoal gray suitcase for a trip he refused to let me see. Gavin Cole was 36 and worked as a regional operations manager for MedAxis Distribution. He spent his days organizing warehouse schedules, rerouting delayed shipments, and making sure every piece of equipment arrived where it belonged. He liked plans, lists, and knowing exactly what would happen next. But apparently, that rule did not apply to his wife. He folded a navy sweater into the suitcase, checked something on his phone, and started whistling under his breath. I had not heard him whistle in more than a year. For months, Gavin had come home looking as if every person he met had personally disappointed him. He would drop his keys on the kitchen counter, loosen his tie, and complain that the television was too loud or that I had left a coffee mug in the sink. Sometimes, dinner was too salty. Sometimes the apartment felt too warm. Sometimes I asked too many questions. Now he looked almost boyish. He glanced at me and smiled. "Trust me, you do not need to worry about anything." He said it lightly, as if trust were a switch I could turn on because he had asked me to. "Where are we flying?" I asked. "You will find out at the airport." "What should I pack for?" "Comfortable clothes, maybe something nice for dinner." "Warm weather or cold weather?" "Linnea." He said my name with a patient sigh, the way someone speaks to a child who has ruined a surprise by asking too many sensible questions. "I told you, I handled everything." That was supposed to reassure me. Instead, it made something tighten beneath my ribs. There had been a time when Gavin left his phone wherever it landed, on the arm of the couch, beside the toaster, charging on my nightstand. Over the past year, it had become an extension of his hand. He carried it into the bathroom. He placed it face down during dinner. If a message appeared while I was nearby, his fingers moved over the screen before I could read even the first word. His MacBook had changed too. He used to leave it open while he showered, or walked Frida through the hallway in her carrier before a vet appointment. Now, the lid came down whenever I entered the room. When I asked whether something was wrong, Gavin always had an explanation. The distribution centers were understaffed. Corporate was pressuring him. A major hospital client had changed its order. He was tired, and I was reading too much into it. "You always assume the worst when you are stressed," he had told me once. I had apologized. That was the strange part. He had been the one coming home late, hiding his phone and speaking to me as if my presence irritated him. Yet somehow I kept becoming the person who needed to calm down. I did not want to be the suspicious wife who checked pockets or searched browser histories. I believed adults deserved privacy, even inside a marriage. I told myself that trust meant waiting for evidence before asking a question that could damage something. What I did not understand then was that I had spent years demanding evidence from my instincts, while accepting Gavin's excuses without any proof at all. I turned away from the bedroom and walked into the kitchen. The mortgage payment was scheduled for Monday. I had renewed our homeowner's insurance the week before and ordered Frida's prescription food that morning. Gavin's mother had a birthday coming up in April, and the gift I had chosen for her was already hidden in the hall closet. Gavin never asked how those things happened. He only noticed when something did not. At Ridgepoint Commercial Builders, I worked as a senior financial analyst. I reviewed budgets, found inconsistencies, and built systems designed to catch mistakes before they became expensive. At home, I had used those same skills to make our lives run smoothly. I had never considered applying them to the man benefiting from the system. The uneasiness had begun the day before, during my Saturday visit with my grandmother. Evelyn Hardwell lived outside Lidditz in Lancaster County, about 90 minutes from our apartment in Conshohocken. She was 82 and had spent most of her working life as a community nurse. Even after retirement, she kept jars of chamomile and lemon balm in her kitchen and dried herbs on the enclosed porch. Her house stood beside an old apple orchard, weathered but solid, with a wooden gate that complained whenever I pushed it open. Inside, the kettle was already warming. Grandma set out apple butter, oatmeal biscuits, and the blue-flowered mug she had used since I was a child. Her hands were thin now, marked with age, but still steady as she poured the tea. Most of my family kept their distance from Evelyn. They called her intuitive when they were being polite. They called her unsettling when they were not. In 2010, she had warned my mother, Diane, not to let any of us swim near the creek that afternoon. Later that day, 16-year-old Tommy Miller struck his head near the rope swing and nearly drowned. He survived, but only after spending days in the hospital. In 2013, Evelyn told my father to have his heart examined. Martin dismissed it. He was a structural engineer and believed in numbers, tolerances, and things that could be measured. Early the next year, he collapsed from a heart attack and survived because a coworker called for help immediately. My parents never accused Evelyn of causing those things, but they behaved as if her warnings had somehow invited them. I felt differently. Her house was one of the few places where I never had to explain why something felt wrong before I understood it. I told her about the trip while spreading apple butter across a biscuit. Gavin planned the whole thing, I said. 8 days. We leave Tuesday and come back on the 25th. Where are you going? I do not know. She stopped stirring her tea. You do not know the city? I do not even know the state. Have you seen the flight confirmation? No. The hotel? No. Grandma looked at my left hand. I had been twisting my wedding ring without realizing it. Gavin says it is a surprise, I added. He wants me to trust him. Her spoon touched the saucer with a small, precise sound. Do not get on that plane. I laughed because the alternative was admitting that her voice had frightened me. Grandma, it is a vacation. No, she did not raise her voice. That man is not preparing a trip for you. He is preparing a trip that has you inside it. I stared at her. The difference between for me and with me stayed suspended in the kitchen. What do you think he is doing? I do not know exactly. Then how can you tell me not to go? Because a husband who wants his wife beside him does not remove every choice before asking her to follow. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Before you cancel anything, find the reservation, call the hotel. Ask how many people the room is for. On the drive home, I told myself she was 82. I told myself she was protective. I told myself Gavin had planned something thoughtful and I was about to poison it with suspicion. A marriage should not be destroyed by a feeling. That was what I believed when I walked into the apartment and found Gavin at the kitchen island with his MacBook open. The moment he saw me, he closed it. How is the Witch of Lancaster County? He asked. He smiled when he said it, but there was contempt beneath the joke. She is fine. Did she predict another disaster? I put my purse on the counter. No. I did not tell him what she had said. Later that night, I woke and found his side of the bed empty. A low voice came from the balcony. Gavin was speaking softly, almost playfully. There was warmth in his voice, the kind I had not heard directed at me in months. I stepped into the living room. He saw my reflection in the glass door. Okay, Mom. Love you. Good night. He ended the call and turned toward me. Could not sleep? Who are you talking to? My mother. She wanted to know if we could visit next month. The following morning, I texted Susan Cole and asked whether she meant Saturday or Sunday. Her reply arrived less than 10 minutes later. I did not call Gavin last night. He told me he could not take time off until summer. Where are you two going? I read the message twice, then I heard the shower turn on. Gavin's MacBook was sitting on the kitchen island. The lid was not fully closed, and a thin line of light showed along the edge. I stood several feet away, listening to the water run behind the bathroom door. I remembered my grandmother looking at my wedding ring. Do not listen only to what he says. Look at what his hands are always trying to hide. I crossed the kitchen and lifted the screen. His email was still open. Near the top of the inbox was a confirmation message with a subject line I had never seen before. Your Cedar Hollow Blue Ridge reservation is confirmed. The check-in date was March 18th, the same day as our flight. I placed my hand on the trackpad and opened the email. Chapter 2. The third guest on our reservation. The message opened to a photograph of a cedar lodge surrounded by dark pines and low mountain fog. Beneath it was a reservation summary from Cedar Hollow Mountain Lodge near Blowing Rock, North Carolina. The check-in date was March 18th. The check-out date was March 25th. 8 days. My eyes moved down the page slowly, as if reading too fast might make the information disappear. 1 mountain suite. 3 adults. 1 king bed. 1 rollaway bed requested. The primary guest was Gavin Cole. The second guest was Linnea Hartwell. The third guest line was blank, but beside it someone had typed, "Arriving separately." I read that phrase 3 times. Arriving separately. The deposit was $2,750. The remaining balance was $5,450, due before check-in. The card on file ended in the same 4 digits as the debit card connected to our joint savings account. The account we had built for a new HVAC system and a bathroom renovation. Gavin had told me the trip was a gift. He had paid for it with money we had saved together. The shower stopped running. I took out my phone and photographed the reservation, the confirmation number, the payment section, and the note about the third guest. Then I forwarded the email to an account I had opened years earlier for financial documents, one Gavin had never used and probably did not remember existed. The bathroom door opened. I closed the laptop and walked to the sink. Gavin entered the kitchen, rubbing a towel over his hair. "You look pale," he said. I forced myself to reach for Frida's food container. "Just tired." He came closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You should get some sleep. We have a big week ahead of us." His eyes were on his phone while he said it. I watched his thumb move across the screen. The hand on my shoulder did not feel affectionate. It felt like a weight placed there to keep me still. The following morning, after Gavin left for MedAccess, I sat at the kitchen table with the confirmation number written on a yellow sticky note. Frida slept on the windowsill, one orange paw hanging over the edge. I called Cedar Hollow. A woman answered after the second ring and introduced herself as Nora Whitaker, the front desk manager. I gave her my full name, the reservation number, the check-in date, and the email address used for the booking. She typed for several seconds. "Yes, ma'am. I see you listed as the second guest." I asked her to confirm how many people the suite was reserved for. 3 adults. "And the sleeping arrangements?" 1 king bed and 1 rollaway. I looked at the empty chair across from me. "Is there a name for the third guest?" "I am sorry, ma'am. There is no full name entered yet. The note only says the guest will arrive separately." I thanked her and ended the call without changing anything. For several minutes, I remained at the table with the phone in my hand. I did not cry. The apartment looked exactly the same as it had the day before. Our wedding photograph still stood on the bookshelf. Gavin was smiling directly at the camera, one arm around my waist. The dining chair he had assembled during our first month of marriage was tucked beneath the table. His coffee mug sat beside the sink. Everything was in the correct place. Nothing meant what I thought it meant. I met Gavin at Briar Lane's birthday dinner in May 2018. He had listened when I described my work and asked questions that made me feel interesting instead of predictable. When I told him I worked in financial analysis, he smiled. Numbers do not lie. I had carried that sentence with me for years because I thought it revealed something honest about him. Now it sounded different. Maybe Gavin liked numbers because they stayed where you put them. Maybe he believed people should do the same. I bought the condo in August 2019, more than 2 years before our wedding. The deed and mortgage were in my name. Gavin moved in after we married on October 9th, 2021. He contributed to groceries, utilities, and some household expenses, but I had never added him to the deed. In public, he called it our place. During arguments, he called it his home. Our joint savings account held $48,600. My documented contributions totaled $22,400. The money was supposed to replace the aging HVAC unit and renovate the bathroom. I opened the bank statements. The Cedar Hollow deposit was there. So was a restaurant charge from a night Gavin had claimed he was working late, a hotel near Philadelphia International Airport, a purchase from a jewelry store in King of Prussia. I had never received jewelry from that store. The amounts were not enough to explain everything, but they were enough to destroy the last excuse I had been making for him. Gavin was not only spending time with someone else, he was using our money to build a life with her. I created a folder and saved every statement. Then I called Briar. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, are you packing? I need to send you something." My voice sounded calm, but Briar had known me since college. "What happened?" "I am sending you a folder. Do not open it yet. Linnea. If you do not hear from me by Tuesday morning, open it and call Rebecca Sloan." Rebecca was a family law attorney Briar had recommended to a coworker during a difficult divorce. Briar became quiet. "Are you safe right now?" "Right now, yes." "I am coming over." "No, Gavin cannot know I told anyone." "That is not a good reason to stay alone." "Please, just keep your phone close." She took a breath. "Send me the folder." I uploaded the reservation, the bank statements, and the photographs from Gavin's email. That evening, I acted normal. I made dinner. Gavin talked about how the trip would help us find each other again. His hand rested on my shoulder while his eyes remained on his phone. Later, he set his keys on the counter and covered the screen when a notification appeared. I began noticing his hands everywhere, closing the laptop, turning the phone face down, guiding me aside when he wanted to pass, holding the condo keys as if ownership could be transferred through confidence alone. After Gavin fell asleep, I returned to the MacBook. His messages were still synchronized. A conversation near the top was labeled A. Rhodes, Vendor Ops. The earliest messages were about a software rollout at MedAccess. Gavin asked about delivery tracking, and Camille Rhodes replied with pricing information. Then the tone changed. A photograph of a blonde woman in a black dress. A message from Gavin saying he could still smell her perfume on his jacket. Plans to meet at the hotel near the airport. Her name was Camille. She was 31 and worked as an account executive for a logistics software company that had sold services to MedAccess. The affair had started in January 2024. The same month Gavin began coming home late. The same month my cooking became a problem and my questions became unreasonable. I read until I understood the life he had described to her. Gavin told Camille he owned the condo. He said I controlled his money. He said our marriage had ended long ago, but I would take half of everything if he filed for divorce. He promised Camille she could move into the condo after the trip. She had bought new clothes and nearly maxed out her credit card because she believed Gavin would pay for the entire week. Camille was not completely deceived. She knew I had not agreed to a divorce. She knew I believed this was a trip for my marriage. She simply did not care. One message from her appeared 3 days before our scheduled flight. "Are you sure she will not check anything?" Gavin replied less than a minute later. "She will not. She is gullible when she wants to believe she is loved." I pressed my hand against my mouth. The affair hurt. That sentence hurt more. He knew why I had stayed quiet. He knew why I kept giving him another chance. He had taken the most human part of me, the part that wanted to believe love could survive a difficult year, and reduced it to a weakness he could use. I kept scrolling. The messages became shorter and more urgent as the trip approached. Then I found one from Camille. "After you leave her at the trailhead, how long before you call anyone?" My eyes stopped on the words, "leave her." Gavin's reply was directly beneath it. "Long enough for us to be somewhere else when they start searching." Chapter 3. He didn't plan to divorce me. For several seconds, I could not move. The words stayed on the screen while the bedroom behind me remained quiet. Gavin asleep beneath the comforter, as if he had not just described the first steps of making his wife disappear. I scrolled upward, then down again, forcing myself to read slowly. The plan was not written in one clean message. It had been built over weeks, through fragments, questions, corrections, and reassurances between Gavin and Camille. He would take me to Cedar Hollow. On the second day, he would suggest a drive to a remote trailhead away from the tourist areas near Blowing Rock. He had already searched for places with weak cell coverage and limited traffic. He would tell me the trail was muddy and that I should leave my purse in the rental car. He would offer to carry my phone so I would not drop it, or say it needed charging. Then, once I had walked far enough from the parking area, he would return to the car. Camille would be waiting somewhere else. She had booked a separate flight so no airport employee or hotel camera would show the three of us arriving together. Later, Gavin would tell the police that I had insisted on hiking alone, that I had gone ahead, that I had never returned. Camille had asked what would happen if someone found me. Gavin replied that without a phone, identification, or money, I would not be able to prove much immediately. He wrote that by the time I reached help, if I reached help, he would already have reported me missing and established his version of events. My hands began to shake. I pressed them flat against the kitchen counter until the trembling slowed. His legal reasoning was almost absurd. Gavin believed that if I remained missing, he could avoid divorce, stay in my condo, control the joint account, and eventually claim some right to the property as my husband. Camille had asked how long that would take. Gavin answered that he had read enough to know the husband always had the advantage. He had not read enough. My condo would not simply become his because I vanished. A missing person's assets did not automatically transfer into the hands of a spouse who wanted them. But his ignorance did not make me safer. He still intended to leave me without my phone, wallet, or identification on a mountain trail in March. The weather in that part of North Carolina could change within hours. Rain could become freezing rain after sunset. A twisted ankle, a wrong turn, or one night exposed to the cold could be enough. Gavin did not need to understand property law to kill me. He only needed to drive away. I picked up my phone and began taking photographs of every message. I captured the dates, the timestamps, Camille's name, the contact label, and each part of the conversation. I photographed the reservation again, downloaded the bank statements, and created a timeline beginning in January 2024. I saved the files to my private cloud account, then uploaded a protected copy to the folder I had sent Briar. I did not delete anything. I did not change a word. At work, I had learned that evidence became weaker the moment someone altered the original record. So I treated my marriage the way I would treat a financial discrepancy that could end a project. I documented everything before anyone knew I had found it. At 7:30 Monday morning, March 17th, I left the condo and drove to a Wawa several miles away. Gavin thought I was stopping for coffee before work. I parked at the far end of the lot and called Rebecca Sloan. She answered in a calm, direct voice. "Briar told me you might call. Are you alone?" "Yes." "Is your husband with you now?" "No, he's at work." "Tell me what you found." I described the reservation, Camille, the joint account, and the messages about the trailhead. Rebecca did not interrupt until I finished. Then she said, "Linnea, I need you to hear me clearly. Do not confront him." I was not planning to. Do not get on that plane. Do not tell him you copied the messages. Do not post anything online, and do not meet him alone once he knows you discovered this. Do the messages prove a crime? They may prove intent, an agreement, and preparation. That is not the same as saying a completed offense has occurred. But the safety risk is real, and we do not need to wait for him to act before protecting you. Her distinction steadied me. Rebecca was not promising that Gavin would be arrested by lunch. She was treating the danger seriously, without pretending the law worked like television. I want copies of everything, she continued. Keep the original devices untouched. Tell one trusted person where you are. If his behavior changes or you feel threatened, leave immediately and call the police. We fly tomorrow morning. You are not going. Once he leaves Pennsylvania, we will meet in person. I will also contact an investigator about the next legal steps. Before ending the call, I asked about the joint account. There is $48,600 in it, I said. $22,400 came from deposits I can document as mine. Do not empty the account, Rebecca said. Move only what you can clearly trace to your contributions, preserve the statements, and leave the rest in place. I drove to the bank before work. Ethan Park, a relationship banker, reviewed the account history and helped me transfer $22,400 into the personal account I had opened before the marriage. The remaining balance stayed where it was. Ethan added alerts for large transactions and printed records showing the pending balance due to Cedar Hollow. Your husband is still a legal owner of the joint account, he explained. I cannot remove his access without proper authority. I understand. What I can do is make sure unusual transactions trigger additional verification. That is all I am asking. For the first time in days, someone spoke to me without trying to make me feel unreasonable. After Rebecca confirmed she had saved the reservation records, I called Cedar Hollow again. Nora Whitaker answered. I provided the confirmation number and asked to remove my name and personal information from the booking. I am not authorizing the lodge to use my details at check-in, I said. Nora paused while she reviewed the file. Because the payment method is linked to a shared account, we will need the primary guest to provide a new card before check-in. If he does not, the remaining balance cannot be processed. Will the reservation be canceled? Not immediately. We will notify him and give him until the check-in deadline to update payment. That is fine. I did not need to destroy Gavin's trip. I only needed to stop him from financing it with my money and using my name. That evening, Briar parked 1 block from the condo. We kept our phones connected while Gavin moved around the apartment, packing chargers and checking the weather. If you text, Frida needs food, I call 911, Briar said. Yes. And when he leaves? I will send, I found the blue mug. I hate this. So do I. I can come upstairs now. No, he cannot know you are involved. Briar was quiet for a moment. Then I stay in the car. On Tuesday morning, March 18th, I woke before sunrise and sat on the bathroom floor until my face looked as exhausted as I felt. When Gavin entered the kitchen, I was leaning against the counter with one arm wrapped around my stomach. He stopped. What is wrong? I feel sick, dizzy. I have been awake most of the night. His first expression was irritation. It appeared and vanished so quickly that I might have missed it 2 weeks earlier. Then his face softened. Take something. You might feel better by the time we leave. I cannot get on a plane like this. He checked the time on his phone. Maybe you can fly tomorrow. I watched him calculating. Camille was already traveling separately. The lodge expected payment. His entire plan depended on reaching North Carolina. You have worked so hard, I said. Go ahead. I will stay here and recover. Gavin stared at me. Are you sure? Yes. I could call a doctor. He did not reach for his phone. I will be fine. I can ask Mom to check on you. He did not call Susan either. For the next several minutes, he walked between the bedroom and kitchen, pretending the decision was difficult. But his suitcase remained beside the door. Finally, he leaned down and kissed my forehead. I'll call you when I land. Get some rest. His right hand was already wrapped around the suitcase handle. I watched from the living room window as he climbed into the car bound for the airport. I waited until it turned the corner. Then I sent Briar 4 words. I found the blue mug. Her reply came immediately. I'm coming. She reached the condo 15 minutes later and locked the door behind her. Before either of us could speak, my phone vibrated. A banking alert filled the screen. Gavin had attempted to pay $5,450 to Cedar Hollow Mountain Lodge. The transaction had not completed. The account balance had changed. The lodge required a new payment authorization, and my name was no longer attached to the reservation. My phone began ringing. Gavin. I let it stop. He called again, then a third time. A message appeared across the screen. What did you do to our money? Chapter 4. The house he thought was his. I did not answer him. Rebecca had told me not to explain, defend, or reveal how much I knew. So I sent one message. I'm safe. Future communication should go through my attorney. The first voicemail arrived less than a minute later. Linnea, what is going on? I'm worried about you. Call me. The second came 10 minutes after that. You cannot just move money without talking to me. That is our account. By the third, concern had disappeared. This trip was for us. I planned all of this because our marriage needed it, and now you are blowing everything up. The fourth sounded almost familiar. You are overreacting again. Whatever you think you found, you are making it worse. That sentence would once have made me question myself. Now I had screenshots, timestamps, bank statements, and a reservation for 3 adults. Gaslighting loses some of its power when it has to compete with documentation. On Wednesday morning, March 19th, Briar drove me into Philadelphia for my meeting with Rebecca Sloan. She waited in the lobby while I sat across from Rebecca in a quiet conference room. Owen Price, an investigator from the district attorney's office, joined us with a legal pad and a folder. I placed everything on the table: the timeline, the messages between Gavin and Camille, the Cedar Hollow reservation, the bank records, the voicemails, the information Gavin had collected about the trailhead. Rebecca looked through the first pages, then turned toward Owen. This is why I called you. Owen read without speaking for several minutes. Finally, he looked at me. These messages do not prove he completed the act. I understand. But they show a specific plan, coordination with another person, and preparation. That matters. Rebecca folded her hands. We are handling 3 things separately: your immediate safety, the divorce and property issues, and the possibility of a criminal investigation. Owen nodded. Do not alter the laptop or phone. Do not contact Camille. Do not post these messages anywhere. I won't. And if Gavin appears before you have an order in place, do not open the door. Call law enforcement. Rebecca filed for temporary protection and exclusive use of the condo based on the threats described in the messages. I had to explain why I believed Gavin's return created a real danger. I described the plan to take my purse, the weak cell coverage, the intention to leave me at the trailhead, the false missing persons story. I said the hardest sentence last. I do not know what he will do when he realizes I found everything. The judge reviewed the initial evidence and issued temporary protections while the matter could be examined further. It was not a final ruling. Gavin still had to be properly served. The condo access could not be changed simply because I wanted him out. Rebecca sent the order to Dean Alvarez, the building manager. Dean read it twice before looking at me. I have to follow the document exactly. That is what I want. He coordinated with Miles Benton, a licensed locksmith. Miles changed the access code and added a reinforced lock only after Dean confirmed the temporary order. Gavin's belongings remained inside. Briar and I photographed his clothes, shoes, work materials, and personal items. We created an inventory and moved them into the second bedroom. Nothing was thrown into the hallway. Nothing was destroyed. Dean saved the hallway camera footage and agreed that Gavin would need to schedule a pickup through Rebecca's office. While I was protecting the condo, Gavin was watching his plan collapse in North Carolina. I did not learn the full story at once. Pieces came through voicemails, Cedar Hollow records, and later through Daniel Rusk, one of Gavin's longtime coworkers. When Gavin and Camille reached the lodge, the remaining payment had not cleared. My name had been removed from the reservation, and the joint card could not be used without new authorization. The front desk requested another payment method. Gavin tried his personal credit card. It did not have enough available credit for the $5,450 balance. The lodge held the suite only until the payment deadline. After that, it released the room to another guest. Gavin and Camille ended up searching for somewhere else to stay outside Boone during a busy travel week. They found a small roadside motel that cost more than Gavin expected and looked nothing like the mountain retreat he had promised. Camille began asking questions. One of Gavin's voicemails accidentally recorded part of the argument before he realized the call had connected. Her voice was sharp in the background. "So how did she change the reservation if the money is yours?" Gavin said something too low for me to hear. Camille answered louder. "You told me you own the condo." Another pause, then her voice again. "So after she disappeared, you planned to live in her condo and hope no one asked questions?" The voicemail ended. Gavin had been forced to admit the deed was in my name. The mortgage existed before our marriage. He had no large private savings account. Most of the trip had been designed around money we held jointly. The future he had sold Camille was no more real than the surprise vacation he had sold me. When Rebecca's office contacted the relevant agencies and preservation notices began moving through official channels, Camille hired her own attorney. She started saying the plan had been Gavin's idea. Gavin claimed Camille had pressured him, constantly asking when he would leave his wife. They were not becoming honest. They were becoming afraid. Each had believed the other would remain loyal, while they betrayed me. Now, both were trying to step away from the same evidence. Gavin called Daniel Rusk and asked for money to get home. He told Daniel the lodge had made an error. Then he said the bank had frozen the card. Then he said I had become sick and irrational. He described Camille as a vendor contact who happened to be traveling nearby. Daniel sent him enough to help with transportation, but the story did not make sense. MedAccess soon received a request to preserve data from Gavin's work devices. The internal review showed that he had used a company laptop for personal messages and hidden Camille under a vendor-related contact name. Her software company had previously worked with MedAccess. That raised questions about conflict of interest and misuse of company resources. Gavin was temporarily removed from his regional management duties while the company reviewed the matter. By the time he returned to Conshohocken that weekend, he had already been served with the temporary order. I saw him through the Ring camera before I heard his key scrape against the lock. He tried once, then again. The new lock did not turn. A notice on the door instructed him to contact Rebecca Sloan and Dean Alvarez to arrange collection of his belongings. He pressed the doorbell. I was inside with Briar. Neither of us moved. "Linnea, open the door." I watched him through the camera. His clothes were wrinkled. His face looked gray with exhaustion. "Camille is a coworker. The hotel made a mistake. I can explain everything." He pressed the bell again. "Those messages were just talk. They were not real." Briar looked at me. "You do not have to answer." "I know." Gavin leaned closer to the camera. "Give me 5 minutes. That is all I'm asking." I turned on the microphone. "The evidence is with Rebecca Sloan. You were served with a temporary order. Follow the instructions and contact my attorney." I switched the microphone off. Gavin stared at the camera. Then his face changed. "That is my home, too." I looked around the condo, at the walls I had chosen before I married him, at the mortgage files in my desk, at Frida curled beneath the dining table. Gavin called it his home because I had spent years making it a place where he never had to remember the payment dates, the insurance renewals, or the things that kept a life standing. I did not tell him that. I did not need him to understand. I simply did not open the door. He remained in the hallway for several minutes, speaking first to the camera and then to himself. Eventually, he walked toward the elevator. Dean called when Gavin left the building. Only then did I phone Evelyn. "Grandma, why did you always tell me to watch his hands?" Her answer came quietly. "On your wedding day, he smiled at everyone while his hand tightened around your wrist. You called it affection. I saw him steering you where he wanted you to go." She said nothing more. After the call, Breyer asked if I felt relieved. Not yet. I locked the door. I walked toward the living room, then returned to check it again. A few minutes later, I checked it a third time. The condo was mine. The order was in place. Gavin was gone. But my body had not learned any of that yet. Chapter 5. The Life He Couldn't Take From Me. For the next several months, healing came in ordinary measurements. How many hours I slept, how many times I checked the lock, how long I could sit in silence before imagining Gavin's keys scraping against the door. The divorce did not end quickly. Rebecca had warned me it would not. From March through December 2025, every part of our shared life had to be separated carefully. The messages were authenticated. Bank statements were reviewed. Property was classified. Gavin's attorney argued that his contributions to household expenses gave him an interest in the condo. But the deed, mortgage records, and closing documents all showed the same thing. I had purchased it in August 2019, before we married. The condo remained mine because the ownership records were clear, not because a judge wanted to punish Gavin for cheating. The joint account was divided according to the documented deposits and the final agreement. Gavin was held responsible for the Cedar Hollow expenses connected to Camille. The remaining household property was settled without turning every chair and appliance into another war. Our divorce became final in December. I expected to feel something dramatic when Rebecca called to tell me. Instead, I stood in the kitchen holding Frida's food scoop and listened to the refrigerator hum. It was over. That was all. Owen Price contacted me before the end of the year with the result of the criminal review. Because I never traveled to North Carolina and Gavin never left me at the trailhead, prosecutors did not charge him with abandoning me or filing a false missing person report. Those acts had not occurred. But the messages were not dismissed as meaningless fantasies. They remained part of an official record. They supported the protective order and the no-contact agreement. Gavin and Camille were required to preserve their devices and answer questions about their roles in the plan. Gavin agreed not to contact me directly and did not challenge my exclusive use of the condo while the divorce was pending. He did not go to prison. Justice did not arrive as a perfect courtroom ending. It arrived as documentation. Gavin could no longer erase what he had planned by calling it a misunderstanding between a husband and wife. Camille left him before summer. I learned through the legal process that she had discovered nearly everything he promised her was false. He was not wealthy. He did not own the condo. He had no private account large enough to support the life he described. He had used joint money to appear more successful than he was. When the investigation began, he blamed her. Camille hired her own attorney and blamed him in return. She did not apologize to me, and I never expected her to. She ended the relationship because protecting herself mattered more than protecting Gavin. Her company also reviewed her conduct because she had worked with MedAccess as a vendor representative. She had legal fees, professional consequences, and the knowledge that the man she wanted had lied to her almost as easily as he lied to me. MedAccess completed its internal review later that year. Gavin had used a company laptop for personal messages. He had hidden Camille under a vendor-related contact name. He failed to disclose a relationship that created a possible conflict of interest, then gave inconsistent answers during the review. They did not fire him. They removed him from the regional operations manager role and transferred him to a lower-level position with limited system access. The promotion he had expected disappeared. So did the trust of several co-workers who had once depended on him. He rented a one-bedroom apartment near King of Prussia and began managing the daily tasks I had handled for years. Daniel Rusk later told Rebecca that Gavin complained everything in his life had suddenly become complicated. One month, he missed the deadline to renew his auto insurance and had to pay a much higher premium. Before our separation, I had always reminded him. His life had not suddenly become complicated, it had always required work. He had simply stopped seeing the work because I was the one doing it. 2 months after the divorce became final, a handwritten letter arrived at Rebecca's office. Gavin admitted he had used our money on Camille. He admitted he had lied about owning the condo. He admitted he had called me gullible. He admitted he had planned to take me to the trailhead. Then he wrote that he did not know whether he would have actually driven away. That sentence told me he still had not changed. He wanted to be judged by the possibility that he might have stopped himself, not by the choices he had already made. He had researched the location, he had coordinated with Camille, he had booked the trip, he had prepared the lie. I did not answer. Rebecca placed the letter in my file. During those months, I began seeing Dr. Helen Ward at Brightwell Therapy Center. I told her I felt ashamed that I had not recognized Gavin sooner. She asked me why I believed trusting my husband was a moral failure. Because the signs were there, I said. The signs were there because he created them, she replied. The deception was his decision. Trusting someone you loved was not a defect in your character. She taught me that intuition was not proof, but it was information. A feeling did not justify destroying someone's life. It did justify stopping long enough to ask questions. At first, I checked the lock 3 times before bed, then twice. Some nights, the sound of a suitcase rolling through the hallway made my heart race. Healing did not move in a straight line. There were mornings when I felt strong, and evenings when I sat on the bedroom floor because a familiar bottle of cologne had fallen from the back of a drawer. Breyer asked why I did not sell the condo. We were painting the bedroom when she brought it up. I had chosen a soft green instead of the gray Gavin preferred. Why stay somewhere that holds so many memories, she asked. Because he does not get to turn my home into the place I ran from. I did not keep the condo to defeat him. I kept it because leaving or staying had to become my choice again. I moved the bed to the opposite wall. I donated the chair Gavin insisted on buying. I kept the walnut bookshelf because I had always loved it. I placed our wedding photographs in a box. I did not need to destroy the past. I only needed to stop displaying it as if it still owned the room. Frida returned to sleeping on the windowsill. At Ridgepoint Commercial Builders, I was given more responsibility on an internal financial controls project. It was not a miraculous reward for surviving. It was work I was qualified to do before Gavin ever tried to reduce me to someone gullible. The following spring, my mother went with me to visit Evelyn. Diane had avoided her for years, but this time she arrived carrying a grocery bag and stayed after the tea was poured. My father came too. Maribel brought a cake and talked enough to keep the silences from becoming unbearable. Diane did not offer a perfect apology. She said she had spent most of her life believing Evelyn's warnings invited disaster because admitting her mother saw things she missed had frightened her. Martin looked down at his blue-flowered mug. "Your warning about my heart may have saved my life," he said. Evelyn did not demand anything more. Diane finished her tea. Before leaving, she promised to return the following Saturday. A few weeks later, I brought Frida to Evelyn's house. The apple trees were beginning to bud, and sunlight crossed the kitchen table in pale strips. I finally asked the question that had remained with me since March. Did you really see what Gavin was going to do? Evelyn warmed her hands around her mug. Not like a movie, she said. I saw a man who spoke gently, while his body told the truth. She reminded me of our wedding day. Gavin had smiled at the guests while keeping one hand tense against my back. When I stopped too long to speak with her, his fingers tightened around my wrist. I had called it affection. Evelyn had recognized control. When I later described a trip where Gavin chose the destination, hid every reservation, and expected me to follow without information, she saw the same pattern becoming more dangerous. She had not known about Camille or the trailhead. She had only known I was being taken somewhere without being allowed to choose. "What did you mean when you said I would not come back?" I asked. She looked toward the orchard. "Maybe you would have returned physically, but you might have come back broken, unable to trust your own judgment. Sometimes the person who returns is not the person who left." I understood then. Her warning had not saved me by itself. It had made me stop. I was the one who opened the email, called the lodge, copied the evidence, and refused to board the plane. Before I left, I asked her the question I used to ask as a child. "What is waiting for me now?" Evelyn smiled. "A life you get to choose." That evening, I returned to Conshohocken and fed Frida. I locked the door once, then I walked away without checking it again. I opened the window and let the spring air into the room. A suitcase rolled through the hallway outside, and I did not freeze. The most frightening thing was not that I had trusted the wrong man. It was that I had almost allowed my faith in him to become stronger than my faith in myself. Gavin had intended to make me disappear. In the end, the person who disappeared from my life was the man who believed he could take my home, my money, my future, and my voice without consequence. Frida curled into my lap. I did not know exactly what came next. For the first time, an unwritten future did not frighten me. It felt like freedom. Have you ever doubted your instincts because someone kept telling you that you were overreacting? Tell me where you would have drawn the line, and subscribe for more stories about women who finally chose their own safety.